There remain on Earth a few holdouts against the present. People still armed with bow and arrow, still adorned in feathers and mud. One of the last refuges of such human antiquity is the eastern half of the vast South Pacific island of New Guinea. Now to the far reefs and forested retreats of Papua New Guinea have come Cousteau exploration teams. The veteran research vessel Calypso, directed by Jacques Cousteau. The turbosail windship Alcyon, whose film and diving teams are led by Jean-Michel Cousteau. They will witness in the sea a living exuberance little changed since primeval times. Reach on land societies strangely in limbo between Stone Age and Space Age. To survey Earth's second largest island, 3 teams are organized. While Calypso visits offshore islands, a land team will enter the interior mountains. Alcyon, after exploring areas of the Bismarck Sea, will now sail up the legendary Sepik River. Meandering across a vast swampy plain, the Sepik is the Amazon of Papua New Guinea. To the villages along its banks come only occasional visitors who travel backward in time to a world where the materials of shelter are still thatch and split bamboo, where the means of travel is still dugout canoe. Few people anywhere remain in such close communion with river and forest, and with the creatures that share them. Supreme among all is the Sepik crocodile, hunted, feared, yet also revered as master of the spirit world. In sacred tribute, the flesh of young men is painfully scarred to resemble the hide of the crocodile. Now in the second of a 3-part adventure, join the Cousteau team in Papua New Guinea as they journey up the river of the Crocodile Men. Through skies where monsoons have recently passed, swelling the great Sepik River, Jean-Michel Cousteau this morning arrives in the floatplane Papagayo to initiate an unusual Alcyon expedition. The team will penetrate a world where water is both a source of life and divinity. It is said by river people that the Sepik still flows from the beginning of the world. Navigable some 300 miles inland, the Sepik is poorly charted and rarely entered by foreign vessels.
A young river geologically, ever recurving its serpentine path, the Sepik is lined with villages ancient by human measure. In a land inundated by lakes, canals, and flooding river, humanity has accommodated to water, invented a life afloat. Canoes carved from bankside trees serve as taxis, trucks, even the Sepik equivalent of a child's bicycle. To such accomplished boat handlers, an aluminum vessel from somewhere beyond is a source of fascination. No one remains in the village. As night falls, the community of Ibom bids us welcome by signal drum. In the spirit house common to each river village, elders dance in our honor. Though the crowded room is sweltering, smoke pots burn to drive mosquitoes away. The haunting scene serves to remind us that we enter a world apart. Here life is a drama directed by dead ancestors and spirits that dwell in nature. Here only a generation ago, maturity was marked by the taking of a human head.
The next day, the Cousteau team joins a daily hunt, follows village men in a rare motorized canoe into a swampy backwater in search of young crocodiles. Yet the first encounter is not with crocodiles, but the tormenting clouds of mosquitoes ever present along the Sepik. For Mark Blessington and Philip Riff, the river seems an endurance test of swarming insects and immobilizing weeds. In a tradition still followed by some, men walk barefoot until they step on a small crocodile, then grab its jaws, hoping all the while to avoid large adults. Long a source of food, crocodiles are captured more for their skins now, which bring valued cash when sold to leather buyers. Though they venerate the crocodile as an all-powerful spirit, river people see no contradiction in worshipping and killing the same creature, believing the god and the animal are separate entities.
How much do you think you can get for this skin?
I think I can get about 20.
Some animals are skinned locally, but most are sold to crocodile farms, like that of entrepreneur Ludwig Schultz in Angorum.
This fellow here is a dealer from up the city.
Purchasing animals caught in the wild, Schultz fattens them to a girth of 7 inches, the legal minimum. Wild adults of 20 inches or more are protected as breeders.
For the ranching, there's no limit to size?
No. We can buy up from any size from 3 inch, which usually we buy from 3 inch to about 7 and 8 inch belly width. And then it's put into the pens and raised up to killing size.
Working barefoot in pens that contain some 900 crocodiles, Schultz's staff seems little bothered by the apparent risk. As young crocodiles are added to the herd, workers prudently keep adults busy with chopped eels. Yet the Schultz operation is dwarfed by another in Papua New Guinea. At a farm near the town of Leh, pens enclose some 25,000 crocodiles. Such a herd consumes nearly 6 tons of ground chicken meat, the trimmings from 19,000 birds every day. Though Papua New Guinea exports about 30,000 crocodile skins annually to the leather industries of Japan and Europe, wild populations are believed on the increase today after near depletion, a result of strict laws that regulate both hunters and farmers.
Crocodile breeding experiments now in progress may further reduce the wild catch, enabling farms to raise hatchlings to maturity. Researchers must reckon with the curious sensitivity of crocodile eggs to temperature. Eggs incubated above 31 degrees centigrade produce males. Below 29, only females. Yet, regardless of sex, they emerge fully equipped at birth with crocodilian aggressiveness and with a sense lodged in the genes of the species since primordial times that water is home.
Guided far upriver by James Kinjamali Alcyon enters potentially hazardous waters. Charts prove unreliable as the echo sounder reveals shifting channels and submerged sandbars.
Mais quand il trouve plus le fond, il met un astérix et puis il s'arrête de scanner.
To scout for hidden dangers, a portable depth sounder is carried ahead. Yet the team must also be alert to sudden whirlpools and to floating grass islands and logs that could disable a propeller. Without incident, the ship reaches Crocodile, a village where homage is paid in extraordinary ways to the crocodile. Here, in an array of skeletons and carved representations, villagers honor their patron deity, the mighty crocodile spirit. For centuries, villages along the Sepik have produced artifacts now prized worldwide by museums and collectors of primitive art.
This is a flip stopper.
They still carve with traditional tools, embellish all things with the images of nature, from utensils to musical instruments to ancestral dance masks. Yet the most elaborate creation is not a sculpture, but a building. Without modern equipment, each Sepik village erects a formidable lodge called a house tamboran or spirit house, both a vault for sacred relics and a men's clubhouse. Craftsmen painstakingly carve even posts, beams, and gables as embodiments of spirits. To expedition leader Blessington, Sepik life seems little changed from that described in 1938 by famed anthropologists Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead. While studying the roles of men and women and the development of children, Mead and Bateson documented the culture that both revered and hunted crocodiles. Probing the bottom with bare feet and spears, villagers believed crocodiles would not attack underwater because the submerged animals would drown if they opened their mouths too wide. So devout was crocodile worship that the flesh of young boys was scarred with a bamboo blade to resemble the scale pattern of a crocodile. The practice continues today, serves as a rite of passage for many young males from their mother's care to the society of men. Word of a coming scarification ceremony has drawn the Cousteau team to Crocodile, prompts Blessington's curiosity about the painful ritual.
Do you remember when you had your skin cut? Were you frightened?
When they began cutting, he says, I cried and tossed in pain. Afterward, they took me into the spirit house where I lived for 6 months, learning from the elders. When I came out, my mother was proud. I was a big man. I knew all the secrets. Like generations before them, the men of Crocodile will dance all night in prologue to the skin cutting at dawn. The next morning, at first light, the teenage initiates appear. Taken from the company of children and anxious mothers who are forbidden to view the proceedings or the sacred dramas. Through a privacy-ensuring wall of leaves come the last of the dancers, signaling that the time for the scarring is at hand. Now male relatives lead the 3 initiates toward the ritual grounds through a symbolic passageway. They chew mild forest analgesics, weak medicine against the excruciating pain they will face. Though the Cousteau team is permitted to witness the ordeal, they are warned not to film the sacred incisions, made now with razor blades. The cutting lasts nearly 2 hours, etches a pattern that covers 2/3 of their bodies. Outside, the mothers wait. Finally, a healing ointment of tree oil is applied to young men too weakened by the agony and the loss of blood to stand. On an overturned canoe, they will recover strength, then enter the spirit house for 6 months of tutoring. They will learn songs and myths of village history, become living libraries in a world bereft of writing. In time, they will scar their sons like crocodiles too, perhaps trusting that what has always been believed along the life-giving river must be true, that what demands such pain must bestow some magic. Uniquely decorated in each village, the Sepik spirit house is a sacrosanct domain of man. A woman would intrude at risk of death. In Corogo, however, the Cousteau team is permitted entry and granted a rare privilege to view and hear the sacred flutes, holiest of village treasures.
Whether people believe the sounds from their flutes are the voices of the ancestors who, in congress with spirits of nature, govern all events, reside in every object. The powers of the spirits can be invoked through songs and secrets known only to old man. As our team learns, elders in the spirit house solicit the netherworld to calm a storm, nurture a crop, or heal an illness. One man displays a bone yellowed by time.
The bone is belongs to his ancestors. He put the power together with the bone plus that leaf.
He tells Blessington and Kinjamali the bone of his grandfather is invested with magic. He can cure a headache or stomach ache by placing it with certain leaves on an ill person and singing a secret song.
You can.
They tell Kinjamali their remedies are limited to minor ailments. They cannot help people meant to die, though they believe their ancestors could cure even the dead. They see little difference between modern medicine and theirs, and sometimes mix the two.
Sometimes, if he's, say, the person has a very bad headache, it is sort of, they can cut through, follow you, just where you got a pain in. Just use a razor blade, and you just cut through and get the blood out. You can suck blood out with your mouth.
If bones and songs fail, they turn to bloodletting. A bamboo knife was once used to bleed a chest pain from his body. Many elders know the jungle and river spirits, but Corogo medicine man Thomas Sua has also learned the forest pharmacopoeia of the ancients. He uses roots, bark, and foliage like prescription drugs, and has today gathered leaves he contends will cure malaria. They elicit a burning sensation, he says, and proves it using Captain Whiff.
Ok. Ah, ça y est. Oh là là là. J'ai toute la main qui brûle.
Suffering from malaria, a man has come to Sua rather than travel to a regional health clinic, believing the traditional medicine is just as effective. Such ministrations are common along the Sepik, where a steady plague of mosquitoes make malaria a widespread scourge. Yet, where people believe the spirits command all things, cause both miracle and misfortune, malaria is not regarded a random disease, but a deserved punishment sent from beyond. From Corogo, Alcyone makes an overnight sail upriver, puts in by morning at the village of Crocodile. As the Cousteau team arrives, village men prepare to set out on a hunt for the creature they revere. Like all riverbank hamlets, Crocodile honors its own patron spirit. They signal their dogs of the coming pursuit by blowing ginger on them. In Crocodile, the most exalted of creatures dwells not in the river, but the adjacent jungle. Quarry is a shy vegetarian, a marsupial cousin of the opossum, known in Papua New Guinea as a couscous. Widely hunted along the river for its fur and meat, the placid couscous is also prized as a pet. This day, the chief of Crocodile village decides not to slaughter or tame the new captive. He offers the couscous as a present to Captain Riff.
This is why he's going to give it as a present to the captain of the ship.
The gesture of friendship is formidable, represents a gift of Kubla Khan's most potent supernatural magic. Thus Alcyone journeys on, carrying an unexpected, slightly baffled new mascot. Embarked today, notes the logbook, couscous as ship's pet and patron spirit.
Through a prairie of floating grasses, we head for Chambry Lake, connected to the Sepik by a meandering canal. During the long passage, our chef Alain offers friendship in the form of a snack to our newest team member. For now, at least, the uncertain couscous declines. His misgivings fading, the nocturnal creature resumes his normal daytime routine. He sleeps.
Along Chambry Lake, men continually fell and hollow out timber, fashioning canoes in the same manner as their most remote ancestors. The blade has changed from stone to steel, but the end product has not changed through the long sweep of myth and memory. A canoe is the most vital belonging of river people, most of whom are unreached by roads, who would otherwise be incapable of the trade and fishing that sustain them. As toddlers, they learn simultaneously to walk and handle a canoe. Become so adept, they sail standing upright in a craft precarious to others. They employ conventional hand-woven nets, but the tangled vegetation of Sepik backwaters also compels them to invent special devices. Along the bottom, a leaf basket appears as shelter to a catfish. Unknowingly, it settles into a trap. A cone made of prickly twigs, baited in the center, snags a curious fish on its thorns. Yet the intricate linkage to nature that supports human life here can also be its undoing. From the Cousteau float plane, pilot Michael Sullivan surveys stretches of Chambry Lake that were open water a decade ago, now carpeted with a weed that has destroyed fisheries and caused starvation in some villages. The culprit is an Amazon water fern called Salvinia molesta. Accidentally introduced to the Sepik, perhaps dumped from a home aquarium, it spreads so rapidly without natural enemies that canoe travel was blocked in many places, bringing daily life and survival to a perilous halt. Biologists described a plant that could double its mass in days. To river people, however, the floating infestation seemed a punishment from the spirits. Salvinia invaded much of the Sepik, quickly covered 90% of Chambry Lake. Mass herbicidal sprayings were considered, but scientists discovered a natural enemy, a Brazilian weevil that feeds on Salvinia. Nearly 1 million of the weevils were imported and released. Within 2 years, the Salvinia was vastly reduced. Though waterways are less choked now, the effects of the Salvinia scourge are still felt. In some villages, nearly half the population left to search for another means of support.
Have many people emigrated from here for economic reasons?
The men of Wamboon tell the team that the lack of fishing and trade caused by Salvinia forced many of their young men to migrate from their village to the coast. Now they earn money working in factories or selling carvings to tourists. Many have not returned, perhaps attracted to what the villagers call the city lights. The women have been left alone to raise children and eke out a living, while many of their husbands have taken new wives, begun new families in the city. In the coastal town of Wewak, the Cousteau team finds the immigrants from Wamboon. They have built a makeshift settlement at the edge of town, a pale imitation of their Chambry Lake home. They demonstrate sacred music performed now mostly for tourists. The power of Sepik culture is such that they try to recreate it here. Erect a small spirit house where they carve curios, often send the earnings back home. Still gripped by the traditions of their fathers, they remain apart, do the thing they know best, which is to sit in a spirit house and carve. A few thousand tourists come to the Sepik each year, drawn by the same exotic cultures and art that exert such power over river people. Though more woven bags and spirit masks are produced as a result, they are still fashioned with care, as the tradition of the ancients dictates.
That's rather nice.
On occasion, village dancers are hired to enliven the grounds of a tourist hotel. Yet their Sepik exuberance seems undiminished by circumstance or age. The secrets long held, the artistry long practiced, ever bind them to the faraway river. They may leave the Sepik, but they remain Sepik people. Seeking out a man of great renown along the Sepik, Jean-Michel flies to the village of Cambaramba, taxis in Papagayo among the watery alleyways and stilt houses of people who endure 9 months of flooding every year. The village lies within the vast river parish of Father Cherubin d'Amboise. Though raised with traditional icons like the sacred flutes, he has become a Catholic priest. D'Amboise seems a living symbol of the evolving hybrid culture of the river, joining time-honored beliefs and Christianity.
I feel very much part of the old tradition that is dying. I know a lot of stories and I can play flutes and I can play drums. They're beautiful things, but we cannot destroy them. I like flutes, and in some places they condemn them. I mean, even some of the sects really turn on them and crush the idea altogether. But even Catholics too, they say, we see you playing flute. I say, yeah, I know. I know you don't like it, but I'm afraid it's a beautiful thing. We have to use it.
Threats to Sepik culture began when German explorers arrived and renamed the river in the 1880s, then set out to assess its exploitable riches. They found little of value in the flooded land, but a remarkable people in river villages, people who still hunted human heads and offered them in trade to the visitors. The villagers were viewed as a resource. Labor recruiters followed, raiding villages to capture workers for offshore copra plantations. Behind them came missionaries, some of whom burned the sacred artwork in spirit houses as blasphemous. But most clerics today reject the harsh proselytizing of the past, concentrate more on improving health and education. Yet the mingling of ancestral ways and Western religion still produces confusion.
I think you're looking at several, maybe 2, 3, 4 generations before a new understanding of how you relate to your own cultural practices, and then how you accommodate them into a new world, a new idea, a new setting.
Father Danbury invites me to witness a controversial and unique mass he celebrates in the village of Angoram. His philosophy of combining Catholic liturgy and Sepik custom is not embraced by many fellow priests. But it pleases villagers who arrive in their best traditional dress.
Strong into all leader belong all Nara church. But by all the church you can walk one time.
Many here accept the new God without abandoning the old spirits they envision in Crocodile and Couscous. To me, it seems they do not convert to something foreign, so much as incorporate outside ideas slowly into their own framework of life, into their own spiritual idiom. So the children and grandchildren of headhunters take communion. But they also overwhelm with Sepik music and Sepik emotion, a ceremony that is normally somber. The bamboo church floor bounces under their exuberance like a trampoline. Life changes along the Sepik, and it doesn't change at all.
To meet the rigors required of them in some future Sepik society, without paper or pens, the children of Crocodile commit English to memory by inscribing it with their fingers in the air or on a desktop.
Yes. Very good. Give her a clap.
They learn of exotic things unknown
What
here.
is train? What is a train?
Big train.
What is it?
Land transport.
Very good. Land transport. Give him the clap.
Yet today's teachers instill as well an indelible pride in the lore and art of their own rich past.
In Timbuktu, Blessington and I take a last look at Sepik life before departing. Though a stressful world approaches, villagers here remain unhurried, as close to nature as our earliest forebears. They turn river to playground, tree to cooking flour, and dugout canoe. They still retain what many of us have lost, the sense that we are each an inseparable part of a seamless whole that unites us with earth and crocodile, sun and tree and water. We can perceive different gods, yet share the same reverence for life's incomprehensible magic. One final task remains, to return a friend to his place in the vast pattern of existence. It has been a curious journey for us, even more so for our temporary passenger. Bewildered now, he will soon resume life in the forest canopy, comfortably beyond cameras. His adventure resembles that of Sepik people who glimpse modern life, but for now cling to cultures that flow on through time, as irrepressible as the river itself.